Hello, my kiddos. Actually, I haven't read for several days. I was too busy at work. But now we're back. And Merry and Pippin are telling their story still. They're kind of in the middle of their story. So let's pick it up there. It was deep night. We lay on top of a pile of stone and could see nothing beyond it. Mr. Shadows blotted out everything like a great blanket all around us. The air seemed hot and heavy, and it was full of rustling, creakings, and a murmur like voices passing. I think that hundreds more of the Hurons must have been passing by to help in the battle. Later, there was a great rumble of thunder way south, and flashes of lightning far away across Rohan. Every now and then we could see mountain peaks miles and miles away stab out suddenly, black and white, and then vanish. And behind us there were noises like thunder and hills, but different. At times the whole valley echoed. It must have been about midnight when the Ents broke the dams and poured all the gathered waters through a gap in the northern wall down into Isengard. The Huron dark had passed, and the thunder had rolled away. The moon was sinking behind the western mountains. Isengard began to fill up with black creeping streams and pools. They glittered in the last light of the moon as they spread over the plain. Every now and then the waters found their way down into some shaft or spout hole. Great white steams hissed up. Smoke rose in billows. There were explosions and gusts of fire. One great coil of vapor went whirling up, twisting round and round Orthanc until it looked like a tall peak of cloud, fiery underneath and moonlit above. And still more water poured in, until at last Isengard looked like a huge flat saucepan all steaming and bubbling. We saw a cloud of smoke and steam from the south last night. When we came to the north of Nan Curanir, said Aragorn, we feared that Saruman was brewing some new devilry for us. Not he, said Pippin. He was probably choking and not laughing anymore. By the morning, yesterday morning, the water had sunk down into all the holes, and there was a dense fog. We took refuge in that guard room over there, and we had rather a fright. The lake began to overflow and pour out through the old tunnel, and the water was rapidly rising up the steps. We thought we were going to get caught like the orcs in a hole. But we found a winding stair at the back of the storeroom and brought us out on top of the arch. It was a squeeze to get out, as the passageways had been cracked and half blocked with fallen stone near the top. There we sat high above the floods and watched the drowning of Isengard. The Ents kept on pouring in more water till all the fires were quenched and every cave filled. The fogs slowly gathered together and steamed up into a huge umbrella of cloud. It must have been a mile high. In the evening there was a great rainbow over the eastern hills, and then the sunset was blotted out by a thick drizzle on the mountainsides. It all went very quiet. A few wolves howled mournfully far away. The Ents stopped the inflow in the night and sent the Isen back into its old course. And that was the end of it all. Since then, the water has been sinking again. There must be outlets somewhere from the caves underneath, I think. If Saruman peeps out of any of his windows, it must look an untidy, dreary mess. We felt very lonely, not even a visible Ent to talk to in all the ruin, and no news. We spent the night up on top there above the arch, and it was cold and damp, and we did not sleep. We had a feeling that anything might happen at any minute. Saruman is still in his tower. There was a noise in the night like a wind coming up the valley. I think the Ents and Hurons that had been away came back then, but where they have all gone to now, I don't know. It was a misty, noisy morning when we climbed down and looked round again, and nobody was out. And nobody was about. And that is about all there is to tell. It seems almost peaceful now after all the turmoil, and safer too, somehow, since Gandalf came back. I could sleep. They all fell silent for a while. Gimli refilled his pipe. "There is one thing I wonder about," he said as he lit it with his flint and tinder. "Wormtongue, you told Theoden he was with Saruman. How did he get there?" "Oh yes, I forgot about him," said Pippin. "He did not get here till this morning. We had just lit the fire and had some breakfast when Treebeard appeared again. We heard him hooming and calling our names outside." "I have just come round to see how you are faring, my lads," he said, "and to give you some news. Hurons have come back. All's well. Aye, very well indeed," he laughed, and slapped his thighs. "No more orcs in Isengard, no more axes. And there will be folk coming up from the south before the day is old, some that you may be glad to see." He had hardly said that when we heard the sound of hoofs on the road. We rushed out before the gates, and I stood and stared, half expecting to see Strider and Gandalf come riding up at the head of an army. But out of the mist there rode a man on an old tired horse, and he looked a queer twisted sort of creature himself. There was no one else. When he came out of the mist and suddenly saw all the ruin and wreckage in front of him, he sat and gaped, and his face went almost green. He was so bewildered that he did not seem to notice us at first. When he did, he gave a cry and tried to turn his horse round and ride off, but Treebeard took 3 strides, put out a long arm, and lifted him out of the saddle. The horse bolted in terror, and he groveled on the ground. He said he was Grima, friend and counselor of the king, and he had been sent with important messages from Theoden to Saruman. "No one else would dare ride through the open land so full of orcs," he said, "so I was sent. And I have had a perilous journey, and I am hungry and wearied. I fled far north out of my way, pursued by wolves." I caught the sidelong looks he gave to Treebeard, and I said to myself, "Liar." Treebeard looked at him in his long, slow way for several minutes, till the wretched man was squirming on the floor. Then at last he said, "Ha, I was expecting you, Master Wormtongue." The man started at the name. "Gandalf got here first, so I know as much about you as I need, and I know what to do with you." "Put all the rats in one trap," said Gandalf, "and I will. I am the master of Isengard now, but Saruman is locked in his tower, and you can go there and give him all the messages that you can think of." "Let me go! Let me go!" said Wormtongue. "I know the way." "You knew the way, I don't doubt," said Treebeard, "but things have changed here a little. Go and see." He let Wormtongue go, and he limped off through the arch, with us close behind, until he came inside the ring and could see all the floods that lay between him and Orthanc. Then he turned to us. "Let me go away," he whined. "Let me go away. My messages are useless now." "They are indeed," said Treebeard. "But you have only 2 choices, to stay with me until Gandalf and your master arrive, or to cross the water. Which will you have?" The man shivered at the mention of his master, and put a foot into the water, but he drew back. "I cannot swim," he said. "The water is not deep," said Treebeard. "It is dirty, but that will not harm you, Master Wormtongue. In you go now." With that the wretch floundered off into the flood. It rose up nearly to his neck before he got too far away for me to see him. The last I saw of him, he was clinging to some old barrel or pieces of wood, but Treebeard waded in after him and watched his progress. "Well, he has gone in," he said when he returned. "I saw him crawling up the steps like a draggled rat. There is someone in the tower still. A hand came out and pulled him in. So there he is, and I hope the welcome is to his liking. Now I must go and wash myself clean of the slime. I'll be away up on the north side if anyone wants to see me. There is no clean water down here fit for an Ent to drink or to bathe in. So I will ask you two lads to keep a watch at the gate for the folk that are coming. There will be the Lord of the Friends of Rohan, the Lord of the Fields of Rohan. Mark you, you must welcome him as well as you know how. His men have fought a great fight with the orcs. Maybe you know the right fashion of men's words for such a lord, better than Ents. There have been many lords in the green fields in my time, and I have never learned their speech or their names. They will be wanting man food, and you know all about that, I guess. So find what you think is fit for a king to eat, if you can. And that is the end of the story. Though I should like to know who this Wormtongue is. Was he really the king's counselor? He was, said Aragorn, and also Saruman's spy and servant in Rohan. Fate has not been kinder to him than he deserves. The sight of the ruin of all that he thought so strong and magnificent must have been almost punishment enough. But I fear that worse awaits him. Yes, I don't suppose Treebeard sent him to Orthanc out of kindness, said Merry. He seemed rather grimly delighted with the business, and was laughing to himself when he went to get his bathe and drink. We spent a busy time after that, searching the flotsam and rummaging about. We found 2 or 3 storerooms in different places nearby, above the flood level. But Treebeard sent some Ents down, and they carried off a great deal of the stuff. We want man food for 25, the Ents said, so you can see that somebody had counted your company carefully before you arrived. You 3 were evidently meant to go with the great people, but you would not have fared any better. We kept as good as we sent, I promise you. Better, because we sent no drink. What about drink? I said to the Ents. There is water of Isen, they said, and that is good enough for Ents and men. But I hope that the Ents may have found time to brew some of their draughts from the mountain springs, and we shall see Gandalf's beard curling when he returns. After the Ents had gone, we felt tired and hungry, but we did not grumble. Our labors had been well rewarded. It was through our search for man food that Pippin discovered the prize of all the flotsam, the hornblower barrels. Pipeweed is better after food, said Pippin. That is how the situation arose. We understand it all perfectly now, said Gimli. All except one thing, said Aragorn. Leaf from the South Farthing in Isengard. The more I consider it, the more curious I find it. I have never been in Isengard, but I have journeyed in this land, and I know well the empty countries that lie between Rohan and the Shire. Neither goods nor folk have passed that way for many a long year, not openly. Saruman had secret dealings with someone in the Shire, I guess. Wormtongues may be found in other houses than King Theoden's. Was there a date on the barrels? Yes, said Pippin. It was the 1417 crop. That is last year's. No, the year before, of course, now. A good year. Ah, well, whatever evil was afoot is over now, I hope, or else it is beyond our reach at present, said Aragorn. Yet I think I shall mention it to Gandalf. Small matter though it may seem among his great affairs. I wonder what he is doing, said Merry. The afternoon is getting on. Let us go and look around. You can enter Isengard now at any rate. Enter Isengard now at any rate, Strider, if you want to. But it is not a very cheerful sight. And that's the end of chapter 9. And now chapter 10, The Voice of Saruman. They passed through the ruined tunnel and stood upon a heap of stones, gazing at the dark rock of Orthanc and its many windows, a menace still in the desolation that lay all about it. The waters had now nearly all subsided. Here and there gloomy pools remained, covered with scum and wreckage, but most of the wide circle was bare again, a wilderness of slime and tumbled rock, pitted with blackened holes and dotted with posts and pillars leaning drunkenly this way and that. At the rim of the shattered bowl there lay vast mounds and slopes, like the shingles cast upon cast up by a great storm, and beyond them the green and tangled valley ran up into the long ravine between the dark arms of the mountains. Across the waste they saw riders picking their way. They were coming from the north side, and already they were drawing near to Orthanc. "There is Gandalf and Theoden and his men," said Legolas. "Let us go and meet them." "Walk warily," said Merry. "There are loose slabs that may tilt up and throw you down into a pit if you don't take care." They followed what was left of the road from the gates to Orthanc, going slowly, for the flat stones were cracked and slimed. The riders, seeing them approach, halted under the shadow of the rock and waited for them. Gandalf rode forward to meet them. "Well, Treebeard and I have had some interesting discussions and made a few plans," he said, "and we have all had some much needed rest. Now we must be going on again. I hope you companions have all rested too, and refreshed yourselves." "We have," said Merry, "but our discussions began and ended in smoke. Still, we feel less ill-disposed toward Saruman than we did." "Do you indeed?" said Gandalf. "Well, I do not. I have now at last a last task to do before I go. I must pay Saruman a farewell visit. Dangerous and probably useless, but it must be done. Those of you who wish may come with me, but beware, and do not jest. This is not the time for it." "I will come," said Gimli. "I wish to see him and learn if he really looks like you." "And how will you learn that, Master Dwarf?" said Gandalf. "Saruman could look like me in your eyes, if it suited his purpose with you. And are you yet wise enough to detect all his counterfeits? Well, we shall see, perhaps. He may be shy of showing himself before many different eyes together, but I have ordered all the Ents to remove themselves from sight, so perhaps we shall persuade him to come out." "What's the danger?" asked Pippin. "Will he shoot at us and pour fire out of the windows, or can he put a spell on us from the distance?" "The last is most likely if you ride to his door with a light heart," said Gandalf, "but there is no knowing what he can do, or may choose to try. A wild beast cornered is not safe to approach, and Saruman has powers you do not guess. Beware of his voice." All right, that's where we're going to stop tonight, kiddos. I love you always and forever, no matter what.